Welcome. This is a new series that I'm starting called A Pro Wrestling Guide for Newbie Fans. This is meant for newcoming fans and those who are considering becoming pro wrestling fans as well. Also, this could be intermediate fans and hardcore fans. And I do encourage, and I want to make this very clear, I do encourage more experienced wrestling fans who knows the business better than me to leave comments below. And leave comments below what you know about wrestling history or facts, so newcomer fans, as well as people who are considering becoming fans, can learn. I don't know everything, and I'm making it very clear to anyone. This is an asterisk. I do not know everything about pro wrestling. And I want people to understand that I'm not going to get all the facts right. This is just my interpretation, what I've learned since the time I was very young. And I learned it around the early 80s. I've watched wrestling on and off for almost 30 years. Well, at least more than 30 years, since I was maybe about 10 years old. I'm 46 years old, so I can say about 36 years on and off I have watched. Particularly now in the last 9 years, I've really watched wrestling. But in between that, I didn't really have a lot of time to watch it. But I did watch it. But I can say nearing over 30 years of experience in watching wrestling and understanding what wrestling is. And I want people to understand that even with that, I don't know it all. And I want people to leave comments to explain what they know. Now, let's get started with this first episode of A Pro Wrestling Guide to the Newbie Fan. Okay, let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. The beginning. The best way to say this for anyone who's a newbie fan who really still doesn't understand pro wrestling, or someone who's considering it. Let's start from the very beginning, and it's kind of dragging a little bit of history into it, but you have to. Wrestling has been around for more than 3,000 years. It was started by the Greeks. Now, if anyone has seen the Olympics, and you've heard of amateur wrestling, that is the general roots of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling got started maybe about 90 years ago. And I don't know exactly where. It could have been started in Europe or America. But this is what it came down to, at least as far as I understand. Around the 1920s, or around 1910s, 1920s, I can't be exactly right about the year. But in the 1920s, let's say about that, amateur wrestlers who used to work for schools, who used to work for colleges, and those who used to be Olympic wrestlers. Remember, we're still talking about the Olympics. Wrestling has been around for 3,000 years, and in 1894, I believe, is when the first Olympics was restarted. Now, wrestling was one of their staples in the Olympics. So that had been going on for a little while. But by the 1920s, some amateur wrestlers decided they want to do a little bit more. Now, I know that during vaudeville days, and that's kind of the entertainment stuff at the time, some people hired wrestlers who used to be amateurs to wrestle for them on stage or in carnivals. That's how some of that got truly started. But as time went on, when those carnivals and circuses, as well as vaudeville, had kept doing it, wrestlers thought, why do we go through them? Why don't we do it ourselves? So actual companies were started where it would just be exclusively wrestlers and not people who ate fire, not people who did song and dance, not people who controlled animals. It was only wrestling. And that generally is how pro wrestling started. Amateurs who either worked on vaudeville, who worked in carnivals, or who generally worked in circuses, decided to come together and actually make a real company that devoted only to wrestling. And understand, amateur wrestlers do not make money. They don't. They get sponsored by either a school, a college, or a country to do wrestling. That still goes on today. No wrestler who's an amateur makes real money. They get sponsorships. Maybe they get paid to a certain extent, but they don't make money like pro wrestlers. They don't. So pro wrestling is when people come to an arena, It used to be for football, baseball, basketball. They would be in a square ring, which was originally started from basically boxing, and they would wrestle in the center of it. That, in essence, is what pro wrestling got started in. People who originally were amateur wrestlers went to a company that was started around in maybe the 1920s, 1930s, that decided instead of working in different entertainment, which is vaudeville, you can look it up, circuses, or carnivals, they would work exclusively for a company that would only do wrestling. And they would get paid to wrestle. And basically every hold that was done at the time was amateur wrestling holds. At least until things changed. But that's for another video. This is only the basic history of what was the beginning. So I hope you enjoy this, a wrestling guide, well, pro wrestling guide, I'm still getting the name down, a pro wrestling guide for newbie fans. Have a good day, have a good night, and watch out for episode 2. What is the type of wrestling? I haven't thought of it yet, but you'll get it. See ya!